Soldier Boy's betrayal theory that changes Homelander forever. Before we get into the video, here's the quick recap of what this video explores. This is a theory-based breakdown set in the world of The Boys, focusing on what could happen if Soldier Boy made a calculated move to trap Homelander in a radiation-based containment chamber to stop him from becoming completely unstoppable. The theory explores why Soldier Boy would do it, how Homelander could survive it, and most importantly, why Homelander might not choose to kill him afterward. This isn't just about a fight. It's about ego, identity, legacy, and the psychological war between two of the most dangerous supes alive. Now, let's break it down like professionals. The first thing you need to understand is that a betrayal like this doesn't come out of nowhere. If Soldier Boy were to turn on Homelander, it wouldn't be impulsive, it would be inevitable. These two characters are not built to coexist peacefully. They are, in many ways, reflections of each other, but from completely different eras. Soldier Boy represents the past, a version of power that was controlled, branded, and weaponized in a more primitive way. Homelander, on the other hand, is the evolution of that idea. He's what happens when that same idea of power is refined, perfected, and then left unchecked. And that alone creates tension. Because for someone like Soldier Boy, existence is tied directly to relevance. He doesn't just want to be powerful, he wants to matter. He wants to be the symbol. But standing next to Homelander, that identity starts to crumble. Homelander isn't just stronger, he's more feared, more visible, and more central to the world they operate in. That kind of presence doesn't just threaten Soldier Boy physically, it erases him psychologically. So if you're asking why Soldier Boy would set a trap like this, the answer is simple, but brutal. Survival of identity. It's not just about killing Homelander, it's about refusing to be replaced by him. Now let's talk about the method, the radiation containment chamber. In this theory, we're assuming the existence of an old, supe-proof facility designed during early experimentation phases, and that actually fits perfectly within the logic of The Boys. We already know that governments and corporations like Vought have spent decades trying to control supes, especially in earlier generations when powers were less understood and more volatile. A chamber lined with enriched uranium or radiation-based suppression isn't far-fetched. It would be exactly the kind of desperate, extreme solution created to neutralize beings that conventional weapons couldn't touch. And more importantly, it gives Soldier Boy something he normally doesn't have against Homelander: leverage. Because in a straight fight, Soldier Boy is not guaranteed to win. He's powerful, yes, but Homelander operates on a different level of dominance. So instead of fighting him head-on, Soldier Boy would do something smarter. He'd change the environment. He'd force Homelander into a situation where strength alone isn't enough. That's what makes the betrayal compelling. It's not reckless, it's strategic. But here's where it gets interesting. Let's say the trap works, at least initially. Homelander is locked inside and the radiation begins to affect him. For the first time, we see cracks, physical discomfort, weakness, maybe even panic buried under that usual layer of arrogance. And that moment is critical because Homelander's entire identity is built on one thing: invincibility. Take that away, even briefly, and you're not just hurting him, you're destabilizing him. But this is also where Soldier Boy makes his biggest miscalculation. Because Homelander isn't just physically powerful, he's mentally extreme. His entire psyche is wired around dominance, survival, and the absolute refusal to be lesser than anyone. So instead of breaking under pressure, this kind of situation would push him further. It would trigger something deeper, a kind of violent resilience. In simple terms, the trap wouldn't destroy Homelander. It would evolve him. And when he finally breaks out, that's when the real shift happens. Because now you're no longer dealing with a Homelander who's just powerful, you're dealing with one who has felt weakness and conquered it. That changes everything. At this point, most people would expect immediate retaliation. Soldier Boy tried to kill him, so Homelander should return the favor instantly. That's the logical outcome. But The Boys has never been about simple logic. It's about psychology. And psychologically, Homelander sparing Soldier Boy is far more powerful than killing him. Think about it. If Homelander kills him, the conflict ends. There's closure, finality. But if he spares him, especially after overpowering him, he creates a completely different dynamic. He establishes dominance. Not just physical dominance, but emotional and psychological control. Sparing someone who tried to kill you isn't mercy in this context. It's humiliation. It's a statement that says, you gave me your best shot, and it wasn't enough. And for someone like Soldier Boy, that's worse than death. But there's another layer here that makes this even more disturbing and more compelling. Homelander doesn't just see Soldier Boy as an enemy. There's a twisted sense of connection. Soldier Boy represents an earlier version of what Homelander is, a prototype, a predecessor, almost like a father figure, not in a loving sense, but in a symbolic one. And Homelander, at his core, is obsessed with validation. He wants to be seen as superior, yes, but also acknowledged. So keeping Soldier Boy alive serves multiple purposes. It allows Homelander to continuously assert dominance. It gives him someone to measure himself against. And it feeds that deep, unresolved need for recognition from someone who represents the past he surpassed. That's why killing him immediately wouldn't satisfy Homelander. Control would. Now let's shift back to Soldier Boy, because this is where the consequences of his decision hit hardest. On paper, his plan was solid. Change the environment, use a specialized containment system, catch Homelander off guard. But the flaw wasn't in the plan, it was in the assumption. He assumed that weakening Homelander physically would be enough. But Homelander's real strength isn't just physical, it's psychological extremity. The ability to endure, adapt, and respond with even greater force. And once that becomes clear, Soldier Boy is no longer the one in control. He becomes the one who failed. And failure for someone like Soldier Boy isn't just a setback, it's a direct hit to his identity. Because if his best move wasn't enough, then what does that make him in a world where Homelander exists? This is where the theory really elevates itself beyond just action and into character study. Because now both characters are changed. Soldier Boy is forced to confront the possibility that he's no longer the top of the hierarchy, that he's been surpassed in a way he can't easily fix. And Homelander, he walks away reinforced, validated, more dangerous than before. Not because he won, but because he proved something to himself, that even when pushed into a situation designed to break him, he still comes out on top. And that kind of realization doesn't make Homelander calmer, it makes him more unstable, more confident in the worst possible way. Because now there's even less doubt in his mind about what he can do and what he deserves to control. So what we're left with isn't resolution, it's escalation. A failed betrayal that doesn't end the conflict, it deepens it. A power dynamic that shifts but doesn't settle. And a relationship between two Supes that becomes even more volatile because now it's layered with something far more dangerous than rivalry. Unfinished psychological warfare. That's why this theory works so well within the world of the boys. Not because of the action, but because of the consequences. Because in this universe, the real damage is never just physical. It's emotional. It's psychological. It's the slow unraveling of identities that were never stable to begin with. And if something like this were to ever happen, it wouldn't just be another fight scene. It would be the moment everything between Soldier Boy and Homelander stops being a clash and starts becoming a war.